What is up, guys? Today, I feel inspired to talk to you about something that is kind of tough. Limiting beliefs. We all have limiting beliefs in our lives. And for many, many years, I had a ton of those. I just didn't realize it. I just felt like, yeah, you know what? I'm just a normal guy and I have my ups, I have my downs. But now reflecting and thinking back in my early teens and 20s, man, I had a lot of like self-esteem issues that I was covering up with initially with soccer, and then soccer went away and a lot of things got uncovered for me. That was like, it's kind of scary stuff, right? That I had been covering up for so long. And so we all at some point battle with low self-esteem. A lot of it comes from the way we grew up, the messages that we heard at home, the conditioning from our parents, our friends, our culture. A lot of those things influence us. And it is said that by the time we leave our parents' house, we have 60,000 hours worth of conditioning, and that could be good or bad. Can I just say, for the most part, a lot of that stuff that we get conditioned with is not necessarily proactively, right? Our parents aren't proactively teaching us to be positive and assertive people, unless you have, you're that small bracket of that small percentage of people that grew up with amazing parents and they just gave you affirmations, and you grew up in a functional home, and you saw your mom and your dad embracing each other and loving each other and doing all those things. If you're in that 1%, hey, you're blessed. Definitely wasn't me. I actually grew up in a pretty messed up, dysfunctional home. That being said, there was a lot of affection and love at home. Whenever my mom was present, she tried her best to be there for me and my sister. She was a single mom. She was here in the States. She was like 27 years old when she first came here. I was a baby. My sister was 6. She didn't speak the language, and so she was just trying to make ends meet. We used to collect pennies to eat Lipton soups. Can you believe that? It's crazy. And we lived in Jamaica, Queens. I'll never forget, second floor downstairs, there used to be a vacuum store. And the lady from the vacuum store would feel sorry for us. And, she would pitch in and, throw us a couple of dollars here and there. My mom picked up a little part-time job in a movie theater that was right below the house. And then she started singing because that's what she grew up doing. And so she sang professionally in Colombia, where we're originally from. And when she married my dad was really possessive and jealous guy. And so he took her out of her career, and he was pretty well off. So he put her in a little pedestal and locked her up in this castle. And she lived, this abusive lifestyle. She escaped that. We came to New York, and, life started to unfold. And so she did her best, but we grew up in a pretty dysfunctional home. At some point, I'll tell you my whole story, which is pretty crazy, and we should probably write a book and have a movie made out of it. But it was early 80s in New York City, and things were pretty dysfunctional. And so I started to realize in my late 20s, that a lot of my belief systems, instead of supporting me, they were actually beating me up. Right. A lot of those things were just difficult for me. I remember when I started my business, I started interacting with lawyers and attorneys and people that became my clients. And I always realized that there was a difference when I had a lawyer client or a doctor client. I would almost like tremble and talk to them differently and address them differently and go out of my way for them and favor them. And, it was almost like this, like I was favoring these people because I felt like they were superior to me, to the point where obviously prior to being married, there was a girl that used to come to my gym. She was an attorney, and I always had my way, I always had my way with the ladies, but there was something about her that I would stumble over my words. I would text the wrong thing. I was always super nervous around her, and started to ask myself that question, like, man, why am I so nervous around these people? Like, I'm pretty confident around like other people, but when it comes to like lawyers, attorneys, and people that I feel some way, somehow are superior to me in their education, I get really nervous. And I started to realize that a lot of that programming and a lot of that low self-esteem that I was carrying from my childhood was still with me, and it was affecting me in so many ways. And it wasn't allowing me to show up how I wanted to show up. And so fitness was a huge catalyst. Fitness and nutrition were a huge catalyst for that change to begin, right? I was a pretty lost guy all the way into my 30s. Not saying I found myself now. I'm just saying I'm not as lost as I was back then. And fitness gave me that certainty because I was in a different body. I felt strong. I felt confident. People would compliment me, and I had all these things going for me. I had the gym. I was a trainer, and my business was going really well. And I bought my first high-end European car and bought a condo on Bayshore. And I thought I was the man. I thought I had arrived. I was dating a girl at the time. Her dad was a prominent physician here in town, and so I had some clout through that. And so I had all these things that were telling me a bunch of lies about who I was. And I covered up pretty well, and I looked like a pretty confident guy on the outside, but inside I was full of uncertainty, low self-esteem, and I almost I pitied myself at times, right? It's like, because I knew the true me. I knew truly who was inside of me, and I was covering it up. I had this mask on. And so little by little, fitness, really that just physical development, the ability to restrain certain foods and do certain things started empowering me in other areas of life. And I started picking up books, and I started reading. And then I went back to school, and school, really just brought this whole other side of me that wasn't there in my teens and in my 20s, in my early 20s. And I started to discover a lot of things about me, and reading for me was truly like an eye opener. Okay. My life radically changed. And I remember a quote that said, readers are leaders. And I read my very first book, Awaken the Giant Within. And I remember that book gave me the certainty that I could empower myself and do things for myself. Like, I didn't have to wait, and I didn't have to be at people's mercy. And that was a very beginning. It worked on what we call our soulish realm, which is your mind, your will, and your emotions. And it really built me up, and it allowed me to understand a lot of the dysfunctionality and how to resolve those things. But the initial catalyst was fitness and nutrition. And then it went into kind of a education and getting there. And then I went into, and I started studying all different religions and cultures. And I got into Buddhism, and then I got into Hinduism, and then I got into Islam. And then I remember I started studying Baha'ism and all these different world religions. And I couldn't find satisfaction in any of these things. At that point, I was drinking pretty heavily. I was doing recreational drugs, and just living a very incongruent life. And so I remember that it was at 33 that my life really just completely changed. And it was interesting because it wasn't a concept that anyone imposed upon me. It wasn't anything or a book that someone read to me, and I was like, oh, this makes all the sense in the world. It was actually reverse. I happened to stumble into a meeting that a friend invited me to. I happened to be at a church. I loved it because I saw Starbucks, and I saw beautiful women, and it was church. I was like, man, it was a Christian church. And I'm like, this is Jesus. I am in. Hot girls and coffee. I'm like, I'm in. And listened to a message that day that was pretty transformative. And I thought that was, a great coincidence. Walked away from there. And some guy at the door there offered to pray for me. I was like, all right, dude, whatever. He prayed for me. And it was in that moment that I just had something that wasn't cognitive. It was more of something that I felt inside, and it was very, very strong. And it was this conviction. And I walked out of that church that day. My life radically changed. I became a Christian, and I'm not trying to impose my beliefs on you in any way. This is just my story. But I found my identity in Christ, and I started to read the Bible, and I started to see what the God of the Bible had to say about me and who I was. And I found my identity in Christ. And when that happened, all those situations in my life vanished, right? I still remember that. I never forget that. But instead of that debilitating me in any way, shape, or form, what it's done, it's actually strengthened me. It's given me strength. It's given me the understanding that we all go through difficulties in life. Some of those difficulties we learn from, and some we don't. And that we can reframe ideas, and we can use a lot of this psychology and personal development and positive thinking and all these things to put a Band-Aid over a wound that needs stitches. But true change happens when your mind connects to that spiritual thing. And that's what happened to me. And the low self-esteem was pushed aside, And all those things that were meant to break me, I realized that they were actually there to build me up. All the rocks that people threw at me, I picked up and I built my little castle. And today I can tell you that I have this thing called joy, and joy is different from happiness. Happiness says that something has to happen. The root word of happiness is the word happen. Something has to happen. I have to go on a trip. I have to be in a relationship with someone. I have to do this, or people, places, and things have to stimulate in order for something to happen and therefore be happy. Joy is very different. Joy says that no matter what is going on in your exterior, there's peace inside of you, that peace that surpasses all understanding. And I believe that that peace comes from God through Jesus Christ. And that reframed everything for me and has made my life a true masterpiece in the midst of a mess. So you do whatever you want with that, but that's just my story. And that's how one of the biggest limiting beliefs in my life was broken into pieces. And now I am a happy, fulfilled guy. And all I want to do is shine that light on other people. So, like I said, do whatever you want with that message, but that's my story, and I wanted to share it with you. I hope you enjoy it. Leave some comments below. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're going to have a lot of different topics and things that we talk about of fitness, nutrition, mindset, spirituality, and how all these things come together and we become better people. So if you're interested, subscribe. I look forward to hearing from you guys. Talk to you soon. Till then, ciao.